Welcome to Comic Binge. I am your host, Paul Herman. I am without my cohort today, Chris Clow. I'm very excited, though. I have two other very wonderful guests with me today. With me, I have Tim and my buddy Michael. Michael and Tim are both unfamiliar with the show here, but either way, I'm very excited to talk about Power Rangers, which I'll be honest, guys, I did not ever expect to talk about that during this whole shenanigans here. So let me turn this down here, everyone. So I appreciate you all for joining me. I really appreciate it. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button because it makes spider sense, y'all. I'm very proud of this, by the way. I don't know if you guys all noticed, but I freaking love this. So I'm not in there yet. That's about a month away, but I'm almost there. I think Andrew's very sweet of you, by the way. I really appreciate that. So yes, if you haven't already, hit the like button, subscribe, all that crap. I hate saying it, but someone did wisely tell me you got to remind people about this stuff. So anyway, really appreciate you all for joining us. I'm gonna have Michael and Tim show up in a second, but yeah, super excited about today's episode because it's really we're gonna dive into not just the theme of, obviously we're gonna talk about the Power Rangers, which is a very iconic franchise, but we're gonna be talking about like the nature of the intimidation of people to just dive into something. And today or a couple of days ago, I dived into Power Rangers comics. I have very limited knowledge of everything about this, and I'm really excited to talk about this in general and just about the intimidation and what that means about jumping into comic books you don't really know or have any familiarity with, and just what do you do from that. So without further ado, I'll bring the boys on because that's how we do it. And with me I have Mr. Michael. How are you doing today, Michael?
Doing great.
Hi.
Excited to jump into this with
Excellent.
you and hear what you thought about it.
I know. We'll talk a little bit more about our little adventure excursion, you could say, but about picking this whole thing here, and then obviously we have my very, very, very good friend Tim Gerasi. How are we doing, Tim?
Hello, doing good. Really excited to be on with you guys and talking about this comic series that I haven't had a chance to talk about too much since it's been out. So this should be a lot of fun.
I know. I could have sworn you talked about this before, like on somewhere else. I don't remember, but I don't know. Like I don't remember if you talked about other places, but I will. For people who don't know, Tim and I are on the Star Wars podcast. Song continues. Tim is one of my best friends. I love this man to death. I would take a bullet for him. I would take a bullet for you too, Michael, but I don't know you as well as Tim. But just know I would. I love you. I still love you. No, but Tim and I love this man to death. So I'm really glad he's on. And because one of the things that Tim years ago, and this kind of goes into the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, is you got me into reading the Ninja Turtle series, the new one from IDW, and you are 100% on the money on that. And you've been talking a lot about this series in particular as well, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And I won't talk about my history with Power Rangers, but I want you guys to have the main floor for the most part. And again, people, if you haven't already, hit the like video or hit the like button on the video. It's so stupid to keep saying it, but that's how people discover the videos, and it's stupid. I get it, but I really appreciate it. And leave comments, say I suck. I don't care. But that way, put me in that sweet, sweet algorithm. So anyway, so Tim, I'm gonna let you have the floor first because you're the one who kind of been pushing me to read this a little bit. What's your history with the Power Rangers in general? And then what leads you to read this comic in the first place?
Yeah, so for Power Rangers, I was there from day one. I mean, the series came out when I was 10 years old, so it was right in my age wheelhouse to just be fully into it. So between 1993 and 1994, I was just obsessed with Power Rangers. Probably, dare I say, even more than Star Wars during that 1 year period. Like, it was just nothing but Power Rangers is what I was into for that whole year. And so I loved it. And then,
excuse me,
I know it's hard to hear that come out of my mouth. I know, but it's true. But
I'm speechless right now.
I can't say I'm like a diehard fan of the franchise. I only stuck with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Like all the other series that happened afterwards, I never really watched or got into. And I kind of started falling off of
Okay.
Mighty Morphin once we kind of had the cast change, kind of in the midpoint of season 2. But but once this comic series got announced, and knowing just how awesome the amazing IDW Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comics was. Yeah, it's a different studio and different creative teams, but just if they can capture that same magic that those Turtle comics did just for Power Rangers, I was excited for it. And this series absolutely nailed it. Plus, I'm a big Kyle Higgins fan. I love what he did on his Nightwing run and Batman Beyond stuff that he did. So I was excited that he was the one who was going to kick off this comic series. And I just felt he nailed it. It's just, I think this really struck the perfect balance of how great Power Rangers can be when you have that nice balance of just great characterizations, action, and still playing it up of that the fun moments that Power Rangers had, but it's definitely toning down the campiness and like the cheesiness that the series had. They're just making it more of a serious tone that you would expect in your traditional superhero comics. So with all that stuff in it, it was exactly what I was hoping for. So this, I've said it before, I'll just say it right now. I think this comic series is the best thing to ever happen to the Power Rangers franchise, period. I think it's that good.
Wow. A couple things here. Chris, I guess Chris will be joining us, so I better fix our I modified our little thing here, so I'm gonna modify for 4 people in a second. So
It's really putting you to the
this will be
test.
interesting. Oh man. Yeah, no, oh boy. I might actually no, I can go old school on this, so I think we'll be okay. So that actually really surprises me. Honestly, Tim, I thought you were a bigger fan of the franchise. You know, I know obviously you're a fan, but like I thought you were like a bigger fan than that. Yeah, that the reunion is that you saw the reunion, right? You guys see this reunion thing that they're talking about? It came out last week, right?
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet, but it's on the list of things to get to this weekend, I think.
Is it Tim? You saw, right?
Yeah.
Is it any good?
It's good. Could have been better. Honestly, there's just a part of me that just feels only they could have gotten all of the originals back that they could have. I think it held it back a bit for some of the stuff they were doing that really could have made it special. But I did like what they were going for, and just having Walter Jones and David Jones, who played Zack and Billy in the original series, back for time years, they were great in it.
Walter Jones, the ex-Seahawk left tackle. Sorry. Football joke. Sorry.
Yeah, if
he's
it
only
was
a
baseball
Hall of Famer,
reference,
guys.
But...
That's fair. If it was like, you know, Sammy Sosa or Ricky Henderson, you'd be like, oh, you know.
Of course.
Sorry. Anyway, yeah, of course. So Michael, what's so funny is like, you know, I have like Tim every once in a while, you know, talking about this series. I'm like, okay, whatever, you know. It's just Tim, whatever. But I think you were talking about this series, or I forgot how we got on this subject, but you talked about it, and I was like, what? Good.
Yeah, so this series was kind of a long time coming for me to jump in. I think like Tim, I was a Mighty Morphin Power Rangers obsessed kid in the 90s. I was like 3, I think, when the show first came out. And so me and my older brother were like super into it. And I think, you know, it was if you asked me what my favorite thing as a kid was, or in those years, I would tell you Power Rangers. I stayed on watching a little longer than Tim. I think I stuck with it through I think it was like, I don't know if it was Space. One of the first one where they go to space. That's where I kind of fell off after that point.
Okay.
Started to get, you know, too cool for school. I was too cool for Power Rangers, you know how it goes with things that you're fans of as kids.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, you know, then, you know, fast forward to, you know, I can't recall what year this comic started coming out, but you know, I'd heard about this series for a long time over the years. Basically, you know, every time some big new arc would happen, there'd some some story would float up onto my Twitter or into my Google News, or just some article would be written about some awesome new arc happening in this comic run. And I'd always read about it and be like, man, this sure sounds really cool. and then I would never jump in and start reading. And so I think the combination of seeing another one of those stories plus then the announcement of the kind of recent Netflix special kind of got me into a Power Rangers mood, and I was like, all right, I'm feeling it. I'm ready to jump in. And so started jumping in, and I think how it came up between us is I think we were just talking about something new to talk about, and had me
Okay.
join another episode, and I wanted to float something new out there, get you out of your comfort zone, and kind of have you
Yeah,
try to jump in
exactly.
because I had at that point I had gone super in deep. I think I was I started with just the first couple volumes, and then now I've got two of the big hardcover.
Whoa!
Nice.
Yes,
Will you here? Do me a favor. Yeah, do me a favor.
yeah,
Blow that up for me because I want to
yeah.
see how. Hold on.
These
Let me put you. Yeah. Go ahead.
To anyone who
Keep
is
going.
interested in reading this series that you've been interested, highly recommend these these big volumes. Uh, they have them
That
for
looks
both Mighty Morphin
beautiful.
Power Rangers and for Go-Go Power Rangers, which is really I think the
We'll get.
whole run. They have them
Yeah,
for
we'll
it,
get into
and
that. We'll get into that whole
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
yeah. The it's big. The print quality is just super good. They are awesome. I made the mistake of,
That looks
you
really
know,
nice.
I I, I
It
didn't
does, yeah.
the I didn't start with those. I started with just the small ones, but then, you know, once I was hooked. I
Yeah.
really regretted not buying
Yeah.
the big volume for the first year. So at some point I'm probably going to go back and buy that for year one. They kind of break it down as like this
Well.
is Mighty Morphin year two, for example, is how they break it down.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Well, and the cool thing is too, and don't obviously don't let me tell you what to do, but I'll say, those trades you got, donate those to
Yeah.
people who might want them, man. Like meaning, like give back because people
Yeah.
get people into comics, get people into reading because that's how it works, man. People like hook people up, do all that, and it's interesting. So, and I love the fact that because obviously we're buddies, and I'm like, I want you on the show because you love comics. I'm like, well, what do you want to read, man? And for those who don't know, Michael is a giant Daredevil fan, and we're gonna talk about Daredevil at some point. But I feel I need to get to 1,000 subs first. Like, I need to get like more known to get to tackle something that's important to not just to Michael but to me too, because Daredevil is one of my favorites. So I'm trying to save Daredevil for when me and Michael can we have a little more of an audience because Michael deserves an audience for this, in my opinion. So
And hey,
because
by then
you're
hopefully
doing the Lord's work.
it'll be Born Again. Born Again will be out. Will be really relevant. I think with this we're really relevant. We just had the anniversary special pop out. So really, Paul, you're just
True.
very
Yeah.
relevant and up with the times is what I'm.
I'm I'm just relevant. I'm just relevant. That's all to say this. I'm gonna get a couple again. I love you guys leaving comments. This is awesome. And he's live joining the live chat. Justin, I really appreciate it. Yeah, like what's really crazy is Amy Jo Johnson, she's also a director. I found out she did some Lois and Clark episode or Lois and Clark, Superman and Lois episodes. Am I wrong on this, guys? You guys on this at all?
No, you're right.
I think
Yeah.
girl. Yeah. She's doing her thing, man. And she's writing a comic, dude. That's freaking rad, man. So that is oh cool. So for those who don't yeah, right on. Well, Andrew, I mean everyone's I'm glad you love Daredevil because Daredevil's amazing. Let me take a quick soda here. My history with Power Rangers is this. I was in 6th grade right when the Fox Kids Saturday morning thing happened and the weekly thing with the Batman, Power Rangers. I was just in that or 5th because 5th grade, I think the Batman the Animated for me when I was in 5th grade. So 94, you had Batman the Animated Series, the X-Men cartoon. Fox was really starting to get their kid programming up to snuff. And
Golden
the Power
Age
Rangers
kids
came out.
television, man.
Yeah, word. And then obviously the Power Rangers came on and I was in 6th grade by this point. And kind of I was just right, not young enough, but I wasn't old enough to be like, oh, it's just stupid. I was not, but I was a little too, you know what I mean? Like I was in sixth grade, middle school,
Yeah, you
right?
weren't
For
the
most
sweet
people.
spot. Yeah, you were.
Yeah.
If it was too, it's a little too campy. It's a little too childish, I think, for the age demo you're in, or at least that's what you think when you're in middle school, because you think you're really cool when you're in middle school.
Well, sixth grade is all one of the worst years of my life in general. I think most people hate middle school and it's awful and I hate it. But to be told, I remember I didn't hate it. It just didn't connect with me as much. It was honestly, this probably was the first time. Oh yeah, dude, really?
That was a good
Dude,
series too.
Kelly Thompson is such a good writer. Well, I will say her latest image book. Anyway, I won't talk about that because I love her. Her Captain Marvel run's great. We're gonna cover that one day. So when Power Rangers came out, I was just in this weird spot where I didn't like hate it, but it wasn't really meant for me. It was the first time I kind of realized, oh, this is for kids. This is not really for me necessarily. Like I'm just aging out of that. But I'll be honest, I still watched it and I legitimately love the Green Ranger arc. Legitimately love that. And the White Ranger so much to the point where like because the Power Ranger movie came out when I was in eighth grade or around like seventh, eighth grade, a couple years later, my dad took me to see the movie. I wanted to see it, even though I hadn't really kept up on it, I still liked the whole Tommy Green Ranger, White Ranger thing. So I had some knowledge of Power Rangers with that. But after the movie, I was done. No more Power Rangers. I was done with the toys and stuff like that. So, it's whatever.
I still can't
But
hear Higher Ground. I still can't hear Higher Ground from Red Hot Chili Peppers without being transported to watching that movie.
Right.
It's one of those like
Thinking
songs
about
that is just
skydiving, right?
forever attached to a thing that you experience it in for the first time. That song is
that's
always the
true.
song from the opening of the Power Rangers movie.
Yeah. So and honestly, I never got into the series. I always respected what it represented for a lot of kids. This was, obviously this is a huge franchise and has a huge following. It's not like the biggest following, but it's kind of like a lesser Ninja Turtles. I feel Ninja Turtles has a way more devout following and just way more stuff than Power Rangers does. It's in that vicinity. Tim, would you agree to that? You love both. You like both. So am I wrong on this?
I don't know, because I think it's different where Turtles is so easy to get into a specific version of the Turtles. So many with Power Rangers, it really is. I mean, I'm sure not all the continuity lines up with all like 30 years of series, but there is a narrative where they try to link up most of the series and characters together. So it is something that maybe not is as accessible as maybe like to be a diehard fan of it, like would be the Turtles, where you can kind of pick and choose what you want. But I know there's some devoted Ranger fans out there. So, but
No, there is.
It's
But
pretty
I feel like
close.
Turtles has it's a bigger audience for Turtles, is what I'm saying. So that's what I would.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
And by the way, this comment's incredible. That's an A. If I could give out a prize, if I had like that much like gumption, I would give you I'd send you something today. That's one of the best comments of all time. Thank you. I don't know who you are, but I love you. So so going to all this, when you were telling me to read the Power Rangers after loving the Ninja Turtles, I'm like, man, if Tim's saying it, it might be good. Like, I mean, obviously I respect Tim's taste. And so I'm like, I'll probably like it. And I remember, kind of this whole series, I remember hearing about that. And I picked up, I meant to grab a picture of this and I feel dumb for not doing it before, but I picked up his comic book Radiant Black. And I read the first issue. Have you guys read Radiant Black at all?
Mm.
His image book?
No, I want to.
I'm gonna get you guys reading that because I'll get into that later. Because honestly, Michael, this is one of the reasons why I want to read this comic book was because of Radiant Black and his series. Because when I'm reading it, he was doing like a Kickstarter with a football player. Football represent. What was his name? He played for the Bears, and he was promoting a Kickstarter book he was writing with that guy, and he was a linebacker. What was his name? Anyway, he was talking about how he was a big Power Ranger fan. He loved Darkhawk. He's very much kind of a little younger than me, and he wrote Darkhawk eventually. But in the first issue of Radiant Black, he talked about his love of like science fiction and like superheroes, and it kind of started with the Power Rangers, and how um he talked about this moment when he grew up loving the Power Rangers, and there was a moment in his life where he was playing football with his friends, like he was a little bit older, like whatever, and his dad must have been at his house if I'm reading this correctly, and his dad came out and goes, "Oh, hey, I recorded Power Rangers for you," and it was like he was kind of keeping it on the DL from his friends, and like so his dad like outed him like right there in front of everyone, and he was so embarrassed, and they all like made fun of him like for it, like legitimately like really harsh on him. And he like really, and he said like he said you can imagine what your people would say to you, back in the 90s. And if you're a 90s kid, you know exactly what he's talking about. And you're like, dang, dude. And it just kind of made me, man, he loves Power Rangers. And it kind of clicked in my head when we were talking to him. You're like, oh yeah, he wrote Power Rangers comics. I'm like, whoa, what? He did? I'm like, oh, cool. So like he went back. I was like, I love when people can go like Jon Favreau in The Mandalorian, or Dan Slott and Spider-Man. Dan Slott, people don't get mad, but just bear with me. Like people who love the character, the material so much, they go to it and they have success doing it, right? And so I there's always something about that I really like. I love. And so with the Power Rangers, I was really looking forward to reading his interpretation of and how he would incorporate the Power Rangers for his own, like his love of their material, into modernizing it. So I was really excited to read this and get into it. So and I'll get into Radiant Black and that, and we'll talk a little bit about a little bit later, but we'll get into the story here. And I'll be honest, guys, we'll again, not spoilers. I want to talk about two, for people who are like maybe wanting to read Power Rangers comic books. And because me and Michael were started debating, and I wouldn't say argue, but we started like discussing, like, what should we do? Because you're blowing my mind. And Tim, you were trying to explain it to me too. And I'm like, okay, this is already blowing. Even for a guy who loves comic books, I had no idea what the hell was going on. Because like, well, actually, you need to go Power Rangers first. I'm like, wait, what the heck? What? No, like what? So what came first? And tell me that, and then I'll get in my spiel. So who wants to explain this whole thing?
I think Tim's probably the bigger expert on it. I'm the newer joiner to the franchise, so I'm sure Tim can explain it well.
Okay, yeah. So Mighty Morphin Power Rangers kicked off the comic series, and then I'm not sure how long after. It might have been, yes, that one. And then I don't know if it was like a year into it, or maybe not even that long. Then they announced Go-Go Power Rangers, which they said was going to take place pretty much right after the very first episode of the TV series. So you're seeing how the characters are adjusting to being Power Rangers, and how like they're really adjusting to school life and balancing everything. Whereas the Mighty Morphin takes place right after the Green Ranger arc. So if you wanted to go chronologically, Go-Go Power Rangers is definitely like the one to start with. But then the series really starts going in weird direction, where Mighty Morphin Power Rangers becomes just Mighty Morphin, and then there's another series launches that becomes just Power Rangers, and then it eventually goes back to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers with issue 100. So I believe that's where it's at right now. So.
And I think that in a way that makes it a little more complicated even too is I haven't gotten there yet in my reading. I'm in kind of I forget exactly where, but in kind of year 2 of Mighty Morphin. But eventually the two series start to cross over.
Yeah.
And so then the order matters a little bit more. I think, because the debate we were having was, for someone like you, Paul, who's not, who the Power Rangers are, but you're not necessarily a Power Ranger fan or have a ton of nostalgia or a ton of particular memory for the series. My initial gut instinct was maybe we start with Go-Go Power Rangers, as that kind of more gentle onboarding, because it absolutely is. It's it definitely kind of introduced you to the characters. This one, there is not really any character introduction, right? It's just, hey, you just go. You figure out who people are through, reading the story, and it kind of slowly unravels, and you learn the dynamics. But Go-Go does do a much more gentle onboarding. I think I think
I
to
like the
me,
term onboarding. I like that.
yes, yeah.
Onboarding.
To me,
That's actually pretty cool. I like that.
that's the game producer in me, term for
I
sure.
knew it was a work term. I could feel it. I could feel it when you said
Yeah,
onboarding. I'm like, there's a work term in there
yeah, yeah.
somewhere. So
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things where like I think Mighty Morphin definitely is an easier to approach if you were a fan of it as a kid. If you remember the show and you know you don't even need to revisit it. I think if you were a fan at some point in your life of the original show, I think you'll have no problem jumping in because you probably remember the Green Ranger arc fairly well, that sort of thing. So I think it's not.
speaking of Green
Yeah.
Ranger, Chris Clow has joined
Hello,
us.
Chris.
Hello, gentlemen. Forgive the gash on my nose. That's just one of the joys of being in the sun when you're not often in the sun, I guess. I don't know, but
Well,
appreciate.
you're in the right state then, sir.
You know, I was born in fire in Bakersfield, but hey, he's converted into
Fire.
Washingtonian. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your thought, Michael.
Yeah, no. I think I was
No,
pretty much wrapping up the thought. So
yeah,
yeah.
you had it there. So I guess one of the things that I want to talk about this series is that for people who are getting into the Power Rangers comic books in general, I had a very we were discussing back and forth what we should do, and I finally said, you know what, let's just read this. And we'll just read it for the first thing that was supposed to happen. And I got to tell you, and I'm trying to find, I thought I saved it. I'll bring it up here in a second, but I'll throw it to you, Chris, in a second, and you give your history of Power Rangers. But I got to tell you, I'm glad we started here because this is a great example, in my opinion, of jumping into a story and not knowing anything. And it does a good job of explaining it to you without going overboard and just brings you on for the ride. So you can always go and research more if you want to. And that's, I think, part of the fun in mainstream comic books that people need to embrace is that it's not scary to come into something and not know everything at once. It's cool to learn it and get to know it. And then if you like it, you can go back and research it. Or if you don't like it, you can just stop and pick and cherry pick, find visually what makes you interested in the story and start there. And if you don't like it, just kind of like, okay, just look at it a little bit, find what you like. Because with comic books, how I interpret things, this is only for me. I look at things, I judge things by the cover. Okay, first of all, you have to, because comic books, you have the cover has to sell you, right? Like if I'm reading a comic book, this needs to, sorry, 1 second here. This needs to tell me what the comic is, Power Rangers, right? I want to see freaking, Power Rangers kicking butt. Like that's another cover, but you get what I'm saying. I need to see this. I want to see Power Rangers in the book, right? So if you have a book like this, the power, with Rita and the Green Ranger helmet, I better see some Rita and Green Ranger comic book, right? Like give me something visually with this. Like, there's manipulation here. That's what the whole point of the cover is, right? The covers will tell you what's going to happen or what's supposed to happen, unless you're Marvel in the 2000s and you just have poses for 10 years. God, I hate that era so much. So my point is this, is like, find the cover of the comic books, find what visually makes you interested, and then go read it. And if you don't like it, just like keep looking. There's going to be something there. So back to the Power Rangers. I was really impressed with how it was laid out and how easy it was to get into the story and get familiar back with everything and have fun with it. It's a pretty easy read, and we'll get more details here. But Chris, before we go any further, what's your history with the Power Rangers and kind of, did you read any of these comics before?
I was interested in them before, but I didn't actually ever read them. I mean, Kyle Higgins sufficiently proved himself on Nightwing for me. And I met the guy a couple of times. He seems like a cool creator to talk to. But his work speaks for itself. Mostly his DC work really did. Hey, how's it going? Really did convince me of his bona fides. And it seems like he and I are around the same age, so it makes sense
You guys
that
are all the
this
same age, I
is
think.
something that he gravitated toward, because I was all in on Power Rangers from season 1 up through probably about halfway through Power Rangers in Space, which I think was 1998. I was actually a really big fan of Zeo. I thought Zeo was
Yeah.
really cool. And that was the one that followed right after Mighty Morphin. So, I was really pretty heavily into the stories that were told. And then, of course, as you get older, you learn about like the actual mechanics, about how they created the show, how it was like putting pieces of Zayu Ranger fight scenes together with this like Saved by the Bell American style interlude for kids, right? It struck me totally at the right time. When the movie came out in the summer of 95, I wrote a letter to Steve Cardenas, who was playing Rocky on he
Oh,
came
nice.
aboard at season 3, I think, and I got a letter back
Like midway season 2. Yeah.
midway season 2 when the original cast members left. I got a letter back from Steve Cardenas that had tickets to
Nice.
the movie at my local Bakersfield theater. It was my mom.
That's awesome.
It was my mom. Weirdly enough, the comic shop that I go to here in
Wow.
Linwood, Washington, I walked in there one day and Steve Cardenas was in there. This was just like a month ago. And I told him that story. He got a pretty big kick out of it. But no, I was all into Power Rangers. That movie blew my mind when it came out in 95. That was actually right before my family moved up to Washington State. And yeah, I checked in really straight through for Power Rangers in Space and kind of fell off with Lost Galaxy. But a few years later, when I was in high school, or like pretty close to high school, that's when I caught wind of the Forever Red special episode from Wild Force that got all the Red Rangers back together, including Jason and Tommy under Zeo, and that was really cool. And then I checked back in a little bit into Wild Force, Ninja Storm, Dino Thunder, a little bit of SPD, but I wasn't really that into SPD. Dino Thunder was really cool though. Dino Thunder had Tommy back, and it was very much in the vein. I think Disney was kind of under control of Power Rangers by that time. So it's a fascinating franchise. And with these stories, I think the thing that makes it immediately interesting is the fact that, as someone who's generally in our age group, Kyle Higgins has the kind of legitimacy as a comic book writer and a storyteller, a superhero storyteller, to apply a little bit more rigor to the kinds of stories that are being told in the books. And you totally see that over the course of, it was 0 through 5, I think, is what's in the first collected edition. And I had a lot of fun with this. It made sense that, there's always, when you're a fan of a big long TV show, there's always like that one episode that really stands out that people always point to. And with Mighty Morphin, it's the saga of the Green Ranger.
Mm-hmm.
Five
That's what I said
episodes.
before. I don't know if you heard it.
Yeah. And I mean, it's totally true. With Star Trek, Next Generation, people point to the best of both worlds, and with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, it's the arc that introduced Tommy. So having that as a jumping off point, you probably know, if you have any, if you are inclined to buy a Power Rangers ongoing comic book series, you've probably seen those episodes. So it was cool. It's sort of like that 2013 Star Wars series that Brian Wood wrote that just jumped off of A New Hope,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, you're
It's
right. Absolutely.
sort of like
Yeah.
that.
Exactly.
Mhm.
That was a lot of. By the way, I like those comics too. Brian Wood. I'm not sure if he's ever going to work again in comics, but
Yeah, well, hey,
probably not going to happen. I
shoot
don't know if he
yourself in the
should.
foot,
Well,
see what happens. Yeah.
yeah, that's a whole different podcast. So Michael, I'm gonna go back to you, man. Obviously, you enjoy the series, but
Yeah.
I'm curious. Give me your I want to know what your, because you got into it. When you didn't, not talking to Tim. You don't have a Tim in your life, I don't imagine, that's like telling you to read this book, and telling you like,
No,
hey,
I
read
have
this, read
various
that, read this.
algorithms. I have various algorithms that present the comic book stories to me in articles that get written every year or so. That and I fell for the algorithm finally. But yeah, I mean, I think I was thinking about this earlier today. I was like, I honestly can't think of a kind of reboot, not a reboot, right? Because this series isn't I wouldn't call this a reboot of the original Power Rangers. I'd say
Yeah,
it's a different telling. It's a new way of telling the story because it's a lot of the
Yeah.
same characters. It kicks
absolutely.
off
Yeah,
it basically treats the first like 28 episodes of the show as its canon, like until Go-Go comes out and that becomes the new comics canon for it. But you know, it basically takes that and you know, I can't think of another like taking something like a childhood favorite and kind of updating it and making it approachable for like all ages. And like when I say all ages, I don't mean kids, because sometimes people use that term to for the kids thing, but I mean
yeah,
literally all ages. Like
yeah.
it's
Agreed.
something that adults can enjoy. It's smart, it's cool, it's fun. I can't think of something that's done that more successfully, at least for me, than this series has. Right? Is it takes all of the things I loved about Power Rangers as a kid, makes it something. I've gone back, and when I started reading this, I went back and rewatched up through the Green Ranger arc because all of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers is on Netflix now, and
Right. I did the
obviously
same thing.
it's not a good show. It's campy, it's fun, but I think this book is telling a great and good story, and I think a way that's very accessible. Like you're saying, it's a very easy read. It's a very quick read. You could probably read this trade in probably like less than an hour. I don't know. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but you could sit down in a single sitting and just tear through it because just lots of great action depicted really well, and it's just an easy, nice kind of chill read, which I really enjoyed.
One of the things that because it's only issues, they have a zero issue, which is a little bit smaller than a normal single 20-page issue. It's like 15, 18 pages, a little bit, not like a lot smaller, but a little bit smaller. It's only 0 through issue, I think 4, I think
Four,
it
yeah,
is.
it's
So it's only
four, and
like,
then
yeah, it's
there's a bulk and skull like additional thing at the end of the trade.
yeah. The crazy thing is, I gotta tell you, man, like and this is not an admonishment completely on the new ASM run, and as I like it, but the problem with that run, it right now for me, this is a Spidey Dude experience spoiler for me, everyone, for who are watching, faithful, is it's decompressed to a detriment, to where it's like it's the art is great, the story is good, but there's just so much, there's just not enough per issue that makes you feel like I'm getting a lot. Where if I when I read these comic books with the Bulk and Skull like backups, right? I'm feeling a lot still. There's a lot of meat on the bone in these stories, and what I mean by, and I talk about this a lot with Rob from his channel Sketchcraft. In modern comics, people don't want to write. Not, I don't want to say generalize, but a lot of people don't put a lot of substance in their comics. And what I mean by that is there's just not a lot going on, and they don't put a lot, like look at this. This is like a bunch of panels, right? This doesn't happen very much in modern comics because this is compressing the story, right? They're trying to put a lot of information on one page. Whereas it seems like in a lot of mainstream comic books, it's that opposite. Let's only do 6 panels. That's it. Like that's the most. And it limits the storytelling. And I really appreciated the storytelling here because the art was fantastic. And guys, tell me who the artist is because I don't know who it is. This person is very
Yeah.
talented and a very good writer, or excuse me, a very good artist. Can render very good drawings. Yeah,
I'm
go ahead,
gonna
Michael.
butcher their name, so I'm just gonna hold it up right here. Right here is
Oh,
your
I
artist.
can't read that.
Oh,
Someone
it's
tell me.
backwards.
Okay.
It's Hindre Prasetya Prasetya,
There you go.
something
Very
like
good.
that.
Done.
But yeah,
I
awesome. The
butcher
art is
everything. So
100% agree. The art is super awesome.
the
And
art
I think
really does. Go ahead, Michael. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, I think to your point, I think, some of these panels are it's a great. It tells like every issue tells a lot of story. There's it's just super well paced, and I feel like not a lot of words, I think they're telling like a very complete, like full story where every issue something happens. And we've all read comics where it's just like, if you take a step back, you're like, what, how much? I waited a whole month, and how much, what actually happened? How much did the plot actually move? And I feel like
And
this
that,
one definitely has that pace.
yeah, it pushes things along, and I think that's the problem in mainstream comics now. And Justin, I want to make this very clear. I disagree with that. I don't think they're terrible at all. They're just decompressed, and they need to put more. They need to put more, like, like you said, Michael. Sometimes you're like, that's it, and that's the thing with monthly comics. There is like that whole assembly line thing you have to kind of go on, and you can't deviate too much from that, right? And that's the kind of the story of the mainstream medium. Not really not for indie books, because you can kind of stop and whenever you want. Whereas Marvel and DC, you have to keep things moving and all these. They have to keep things going on a cycle. And I do think that when I read this, Kyle Higgins does a great job of knowing the strength of the medium, because he gives the artist a lot to do. Because it's not like he's saying, here, just do a couple things, whatever. It's like, no, you look at this, it's like, this is a lot going on in this script probably called for a lot of shots, a lot of panels. And I'm pretty sure him and the artist probably worked together pretty closely on this to get a good compression of the story. And that's the thing, like, I was really impressed with how Kyle, and it extends with Radiant Black. He really puts a lot into his books. You're never getting a decompressed story. You're getting a very cohesive story that's concise, and whether you like the story or not is another thing, but it definitely is not like decompressed, and I appreciate that. Tim, do you want to talk about the story, some of the elements of this, like of Kyle Higgins himself? Because I know you've read his comic books too, like Chris.
Yeah. So again, I just love how he just dives into elements of the characters that the show would like never even dream or dare explore. Because with the series, it's always just almost like there's no consequences for actions or anything. Like they save the day, status quo back all over again, everyone's happy, all that type of stuff. But this one, when things go wrong,
Yeah.
I just really like how he dives into the characters' reactions to that. Especially in just how he did Tommy right after coming off of the Green Ranger arc, just him dealing with him still coping with like those visions he's having, and then thinking, do the other Rangers even trust him yet? Or and that whole dynamic of just not being so easy. Oh, hey, you're good. You're one of us now. Like everything is just perfect. The fact that there is some struggles and some bumps on the road as far as them all working together, learning how to trust each other. I just he really captured that in a great, realistic way that you would kind of expect that to happen amongst these characters and what they're dealing with after that huge arc of the Event Ranger. So again, going back to how we said, it was a brilliant move to have the series pick up right after that, and just going in directions that necessarily didn't think would happen. But yet, when you read it, it just makes total sense that this probably would be how it would play out just immediately right after, where things just don't go exactly according to plan, or like how the series initially does. So just the way to explore just kind of like the mental state of Tommy, especially during this arc, and just not to get into spoilers, but what it leads to down the line is just like really great build up.
I'll say one thing I want to add. I think just on just the story elements in this comic is, this is a small thing, but I just love how uh, how he wrote and kind of changed, because like not a lot has changed too much from the original show. I think everything is pretty faithful, but one thing I feel like is very different, and I think it's just modernized a lot, is Bulk and Skull are, the school bullies in the original series, just very comic relief and cartoon bullies. They're still the comic relief characters in this, but I think the angle of them as, as basically as YouTubers and podcasters, I think is, reporting on the Power Rangers and Angel Grove, I think is just a fun twist of their characters. I think it it feels within the heart of who those
Yeah.
characters are, but is a much more believable modern approach to the kind of deadbeat the deadbeat kids at school or something like that.
Yeah, and to bring up Bulk and Skull one more time, they do a great job of Did I say his name wrong?
No, I just love those goofballs. That's all.
Yeah, those guys are crazy. They use them.
Same.
They use them a great way to kind of get you caught up to speed. Now I want to bring this up again because people need to realize this happens in comics a lot. They do recap pages like this a lot. So whenever you're like worried about things, a mainstream comic writer's job is a lot of times to keep every issue is a new person's issue, right? And that's a lot of writers do try to hold that motto, and this happens a lot. More than you realize. And there's always hints and callbacks to fill you in dialogue and whatnot. And in this comic book in particular, if you're wondering like how much do I need to know, they get you up to speed like that. And again, Kyle Higgins does a great job of doing that. I don't know if you guys like this part at all. I love this part personally.
Yeah, well, one of the things that occurs to me in just absorbing these issues too is that the kind of storytelling that is employed over the course of these issues is a little unusual when it comes to Power Rangers, just because the shows, you had 22, 23 minutes, and then you were bam moving on to the next thing. The table was reset and you were moving on. Outside of like the longer form things like the movies, for instance, you didn't really. And then some of the later shows had something resembling serialized storytelling, but it was still pretty hard episode breaks in some of the later shows that I saw, like from the early 2000s. But this is like you get to spend more time with the original Rangers in a way that you never did on the original show. And you could tell that Higgins is a writer who kind of thought through what the mechanics are for the team dynamic. You guys have already mentioned the doubt that is introduced by we're just going to let this guy into our ranks after he almost decimated us. That would naturally create a little bit of discord among the core team dynamic. So the fact that that is a story component for the team to overcome in this particular set of issues, that's really cool already. But then you also get to spend more time with the quote unquote trappings of the world, like you see Billy working on the Zords in his off hours, it's just like those kinds of things are the training that Zordon would put the Rangers through at the command center, those kinds of things that you didn't really get to see a whole lot of in the show because the show was barreling through the stories that it could tell over the course of its ludicrously long seasons, right? So I like that this is a story that allows for quieter, more contemplative character moments, but that doesn't take away at all from the very particular brand of action that comes from a Power Rangers story, and at the end of the day too, like it dials down, I guess I say this with affection, the ridiculousness of the of like the core team dynamics, but it doesn't do it too much that it takes away from the identity of what makes Power Rangers recognizably Power Rangers. They're all still speaking in unison, and they're all saying exactly the kind of power that they're trying to summon right before they use it, and those kinds of things. And I think that if you ditched those things, it would feel a little bit wrong, sort of like how the 2017 movie got away from some of those typical trappings to a distracting degree. At least I thought. Still not I don't think that was a bad movie. It was a movie that could have been a whole lot worse than it was. But outside of those kinds of things, this does feel like
the weakest aspect of that movie is when they actually become Power Rangers, which was disappointing about it.
Yeah, it's missing something. It's missing something that is not missing in these issues.
Michael?
Oh no, I was just gonna make it. That movie. I really enjoyed that movie, but I've never hated the production design on a movie and the costume design on a movie more than I hated that movie. Like the suits in the Megazords look terrible. Yeah, they're so bad.
It's like they watched the beginning of Man of Steel way
that's
too many
perfection
times.
right there.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, and I think that's what something this comic does is it gets, and it didn't try to reinvent the wheel. The original designs are perfect. There's no need to change them. Like I think I was flipping through just trying to find some favorite panels, and it's like, what's cool is the Dragon Zord, And like
Yeah.
this panel is so cool.
Dude,
And it's like,
word. Yeah.
and it's like I don't like, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Like take
Whenever
what
I
works
see it
and
too, I can hear,
then-
it's
So
just, it's great.
Michael, put that panel back on. I
Yes.
see it was covered up. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. I was my mistake.
let me
Michael gets,
find it real quick.
Michael gets a spotlight today, y'all. He gets a spotlight.
All right, now I'm under pressure not be able to find it.
How
Let's see.
dare you?
Let's
Here,
see.
I'll cover you up just to give you
Let's
just
see.
get back
Let's
up.
see.
So while he looks for that, people, I will
Although,
say that,
you know what I do have to
Here we
say
go.
though, in terms
found
of
it.
oh, you got it.
found it.
Wait, hold on.
I found it.
Okay. Here we go. That is
That's
a
a good
great,
one.
great.
That's
That's
a
a
good
great
one.
pick.
Yeah.
Great pick. All right, go ahead, Chris. Go ahead. Explain yourself.
In terms of the
Awesome.
costumes, I do want to. I really liked the design of the movie's costumes. I still really like the design of the original movie's costumes.
Yeah, no, those are great.
It's just like it's such a strict, because like as comic book fans, we're so accustomed to like the intersections of alternate realities and alternate universes and everything, and that's what that movie is. It's so strange to think about how you go from the shoestring budget of the TV show to where they're given an abundance of money to like build these sets that and these costumes and these effects, at least in most cases, that look really, really good, end fight aside. But that's just like a whole other universe that we haven't seen anything. And I love Ivan Ooze. But there is
You mean
something to be
Apocalypse?
said. They were calling him Ivan Ooze, weren't they, when that movie came out? And I totally see that. Paul Freeman too is just brilliant in the movie. I don't think he gets enough credit for how brilliant he is in that movie.
Who doesn't love some like booger enemies?
Yeah, right.
Booger enemies.
Hey, the first thugs, man, those frightened me the first time in the theater. I have to say, when they're in the construction site and they're like, and they're like zooming into their faces, and you see the whites of their eyes like creeping up on them, and then when "Are you ready?" kicks it, it's just like, yeah, let's do this. This is great. But there is something to be said
Upgrade
though
that soundtrack.
about that was like the
Uh-oh,
first CD
we're
I ever
in
bought. Was
trouble.
the Power Rangers movie soundtrack. But shampoo, man, shampoo.
God.
Oh, I know it. But the iconography of the original costumes, though, is really well represented by this artwork, and not only the pencils, but the coloring is super on point.
Everything's on point. The inking, the coloring, everything's on point. This is, and for people who are on the fence or like are kind of, should I go read? This is not a bad series. It's not Frank Miller. It's not artsy fartsy. It is what you see is
Well,
what
do
you
you
get.
expect, right? I mean,
Well,
that's
hold
what
on.
it is,
I was
right?
getting there, sir.
I'm not.
Okay?
I'm
Hold
not. I'm
on.
not chastising you. I'm just saying, if you
Right,
go
right,
in, generally speaking, if you go in to read a Mighty Morphin Power Rangers comic book, like, I honestly don't know what more you could ask for, and I'm probably going to keep going with this series because I hadn't read any of the other issues. But no, this is solid. If you're a fan of that show, yeah,
that's
great.
cool. And I'll be honest, I liked it. I don't know if I want to continue. It didn't grab me like the Ninja Turtle stuff did, Tim. Like I liked it. I would not, if you guys were like, hey, let's all keep going, y'all, and all three you really wanted to keep going, doing more issues around the road of the show, I'd do it. But I wouldn't do it on my own. Like, for instance, when Tim made me read Ninja Turtles, I literally binged like 40 issues in like 2 weeks. It was incredible. And you bet your ass we'll be doing a Ninja Turtles thing soon because the movie's coming out. I'm excited about the movie, and those IDW comics are awesome. So, Tim, yeah, and actually, you know what? F it, Michael. I'm dragging you with me. So
I mean, I love some Ninja Turtles, and I've never read those, so I'm on board.
It's gonna be. We're gonna have a Ninja Turtle council or something like that because we have Michael from the Rocketeer. If he's out watching. If you're watching, you'll be on it. I promise. Don't worry. He's a diehard Turtle fan too. So, and I love Turtles. Chris likes the Turtles. We all love the Turtles. We still have to go through the original Eastman and Laird stuff too. I mean, so we've already did one. I gotta get Katie back on here too.
Well, but that's the thing too, though, man. I think that there is a point of comparison there because, if you grew up with that show,
yeah,
then I mean, because the Turtles for you was probably the Power Rangers for me.
Yeah, and that's what we were talking about earlier before you because you're so late because you're being a family man, you
Sorry.
big ass. No, but like the thing is with Power Rangers, I do think it's kind of like a lesser Ninja Turtles. I think the Turtles are a bigger brand than the Power Rangers, but like they're in the same vicinity at the same time though too, right? So that's what I said.
The derivations on the Turtles have been far more consistent than the derivations of the Power Rangers. I think that's pretty sick. But you know what, man? I still play that Super Nintendo game ludicrously often.
Word. That game is legit. That Super Nintendo, I played that game the hell out of that game. That game is so good.
The game that is one of my all-time favorites is if you've played the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie, the game, Sega Genesis, that game, that's my all-time favorite beat 'em up. That game,
really,
yes, that game is amazing. I have a copy somewhere. I found one on eBay like years back. But
see, I didn't play the Genesis version. I played because I had a Super Nintendo.
I'm sure it's the same thing.
Different. It's the same thing.
Actually, you'd be surprised. Next time you're just goofing around on eBay, on YouTube. Look at clips of both because they're weirdly different. Like it's kind of.
I mean, I guess that did happen. I think if you wanted the blood in Mortal Kombat, you went to the Sega Genesis.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So there were weird artifacts of the era.
I love the 90s, dude. The 90s are so ridiculous. Everyone, the 90s, people try to say make the 90s a comeback, and I'm like, no, keep them away from me because they were terrible. 90s were bad, man. So I will say this. This is a fun read, and you guys all love it, and we'll get into some final thoughts. I do want to talk a little bit about a couple things. If you're interested in reading this book, I have obviously. Will you do me a favor, Michael? Will you grab a physical book real quick for me? The one you had that you first got. Hold on, I'm gonna blow you up. You guys can go buy the original trade. Hold on, I'll get the. Oh, God, come on, sorry. 1 second. Hold on. I'm on a well-oiled machine on this thing, guys. You can go buy the trade. That's right here. That Michael has. That's very, very lovely. You can also. You're done now, by the way. You can also buy it digitally on Comixology, which is not a bad thing. I love Comixology, digital comics, always good. But the best kept secret, y'all, is this right here. Hoopla. Hoopla is the shizzy. It is free comic books through the public library. Like I got mine through the Seattle library system. And you'll probably have yours as well. Hoopla is where I read this comic book series. And I'm going to tell you right now, free comics, not just Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, they have a lot on here. So if you don't want to spend money on digital comic books, you don't have to. Go to Hoopla. Your public library is all through it. They keep things updated pretty good. You can read all kinds of stuff. So please, if money's tight, which hey, y'all, I get it. Hoopla is where it's at. So go check it out. And and also they have this on here too, which I'm going to encourage you all to read. And I'm going to also get you all on, and eventually other people as well. I had Adam and Neil and we reviewed Radiant Black Volume 1, I think the first year of the binge, and I liked it. And since then, Radiant Black's universe has expanded into something called the Supermassive Universe, which is definitely heavily influenced by his love of the Power Rangers, which Radiant Black is almost like a weird offshoot of the Power Rangers. I'll just leave it at that. It's not that at all. It's not the Power Rangers, but you'll see what I mean. But it's really good. And we're going to definitely talk about that eventually. But yeah, go if you guys haven't already, go on Hoopla or whatever. All the volumes are on there. I think most of it's on there. It's called the Supermassive Universe, and the first 2 volumes of Radiant Black are outstanding and both heartbreaking, hilarious, fun, interesting, a little bit thought provoking. If you think that, and honestly. I never thought Kyle Higgins was a phenomenal writer before, and I'm not trying to talk mess or anything, but reading those comic books made me appreciate him as a writer 100% more. And I actually I was looking forward to reading his Dark Hawk comic, which I thought was really good too. and I think he's a pretty underrated writer in comics, honestly. And Radiant Black is 100% go read those comics. They're fantastic. I haven't read the other Supermassive books yet, but I'm going to. And I can't wait. But I want to read volume 3 first before I just got volume 3 the other day, and we're moving soon, and it's chaos right now in my life. So, but the comic binge moves on. So, anyway, but yeah, guys, all read Radiant Black. Come back and tell me what you think. Yeah, final thoughts. I'm going to throw it to Chris. You're first. I'll let the guys have out their last thoughts. What's your final thoughts on Mighty Morphin Power Rangers?
Recommend it. It's a franchise that someone who is uninitiated might be surprised has some pretty decent character moments. And granted, I will totally submit to the idea that maybe you needed to get in on the ground floor when you were a kid to watch the show and to sort of get into the dynamics of the characters to really feel like it's something you could get on board with. But if you find yourself predisposed or at least open to the idea of absorbing a Power Rangers story, it might not be a bad idea to go to this before you even go to the shows. Like if you haven't seen an episode of the show and you kind of want to get an idea and a feel for what the stories are about,
How would you want to watch the show, to be honest?
Overcome what?
How would you want to watch the show now? I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm just being real with y'all.
There's a very well, look, I get it, but there is a very particular brand of ridiculousness and fun that comes from watching a Power Ranger. Like if you are already if you liked Saved by the Bell, for instance, and you also like karate moves, then this is a perfect show for you to watch. Like people watch Saved by the Bell all the time. They did a gritty reboot of Saved by the Bell, weirdly enough. And we're going to see some of the original Rangers again soon. But either way, there's a cool dynamic that is explored between these rather disparate personalities that the original writing probably didn't have enough maturity to take full advantage of. Higgins has that, and you could also tell that he has a reverence for the characters that helps to accentuate what the team dynamic is, and the value that Tommy in particular can extract from being a part of that team and finding a new sense of belonging that we didn't really get to see him find in the show. It's just like he chucked off Rita's influence and was immediately accepted, and that was the rest of the story, right? But this gives a little additional nuance to it in a way that I found, as a fan of the original show, to be authentic and rewarding to ultimately read. And on top of that, it's just really well written. So check it out. I think it's worth your time if you're predisposed and you're open to it.
That's pretty well said, actually. Tim, I'm gonna let you have the floor first for Michael. What's your final thoughts on Power Rangers?
Great series. I mean, it got off to such a great start with this first run by Kyle Higgins, but I'll just say too, it just gets better and better, even beyond Kyle Higgins' run. I think I'm not fully caught up with the series myself. I just read volume 4 of when it became just Mighty Morphin. And that story arc, which deals with Zordon's history, Lord Zed's history, that's, to me, that's a game-changing arc where when I was reading those, it's like, yeah, this is the best story that's ever told in Power Rangers. And if you're looking for just like the definitive Power Ranger story, I think it's in there. And just the way for a fan of me, if only of the original series, is taking what I love about that and, as a Chris, just giving it like that more mature type storytelling with its character and things that just seem so like realistic in the scenes that are in. I mean, one of the things that kind of made me leave the series for a bit is when we lost Jason, Zach, and Trini to Rocky, Aisha, and Adam midway through season 2. I was so disappointed by that. To me, it was kind of like the turning point of my fandom for the series. But in the comics, it turns that situation into a phenomenal story, and just the character dynamics that comes with that, and how the reaction that the characters who do remain Rangers have towards them when they leave. But again, I don't want to go into spoilers, but just cool stuff happens with all characters involved, and the way that you're just bringing all these characters from the series that never kind of got to interact or in the TV series in this comic, making for one big epic story, is just so brilliantly well done. It was all started and the foundation was laid right here in this first volume, and then even though the order kind of messy sometimes, but going back and what they did with Go-Go Power Rangers, establishing those relationships with the characters even more, just building on these strong character dynamics and relationship that makes Power Rangers so great. It just hasn't been done any better than what's been done in this comic series. So yeah, I said it at the beginning, I'll say it again. This is the best thing that ever happened to the Power Rangers franchise. I don't think you'll find better storytelling within the franchise than within this comic series.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Michael, one of the things that you talked about how, and Tim, you kind of talked about how it doesn't dumb it down. It really takes it seriously. The material is a little more like serious doesn't mean more adult. I would say, I think we'd all agree. And I loved how you brought up, Michael, that
Sure.
it's all ages, right? And Tim, I'm not obviously admonishing you at all. I'm just saying, like, you guys are both kind of saying the same thing, I think, in some ways, because I think that the problem with kids, and as a guy who's a big giant kid himself and has a kid now and taking care of a kid, which is very scary at the same time to think about. You have a big kid taking care of another kid. That's frightening. The thing is, as someone, I remember very well being a child and thinking and knowing that, like, when an audience or even an adult is talking down to you, but not trying to talk down to you, but they're like, well, you're just a kid. You don't really know what you're talking about. Like, but they're not saying that outright, but they're treating you like that. Right. And that's the thing about this comic book, is that it's not like, it doesn't have anything that's gross or bad that I think a little kid couldn't read, but it doesn't doesn't treat them stupid, because kids are not stupid. They're in fact actually extremely brilliant, and they're way smarter than any adult gives them credit for, or most adults give them credit for. And I love how you guys both are kind of talked about what makes, I think, the strength of this book is that it never takes itself to a point where it embraces what it is, but it doesn't talk down to the audience. And that's what's really pivotal. And so I don't mean to take more of your time here, Michael, but I loved how you said that this is truly an all ages book. And I liken that back to Star Wars. Why I love Star Wars. Star Wars is an all ages family. It's a family franchise that everyone can sit down, whether you're some stupid hard boiled, a teenager being like, I hate everyone. You can sit down and watch Star Wars, and they're probably like, that's pretty good. Like, they'll try to they'll act like it wasn't cool on the outside, but inside they'll be like, that's pretty cool. You know what I mean? Like, but everyone, grandma, be like, oh, I love that Star Wars. They'll be like all that stuff. Like, everyone can identify with Star Wars because there's something for everyone in it. And so, sorry, but I think Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, this comic, is not that level necessarily, but it is in that vein where it takes itself seriously enough to where young people, older people, men, women, whatever, it's such a diverse style of storytelling that credits the series, that the all ages format is really beneficial to, I think, this comic book in particular. So really well said earlier, Michael. And any last thoughts and everything?
Yeah, I think I really just agree with everything I know and everyone else has said about the series. I think, I agree with Tim, especially it just keeps getting better from here. I think if the idea of this book interests you, I think I highly recommend checking it out. I think I put it off for years, and, after, I got the first 2 volumes, and then next thing I know, I have 2 giant, hardback volumes.
That's how it works.
Was in the
That's
deep
how it
end.
happens.
Highly recommend. I said this earlier, but highly recommend
They're so good. They look good.
They're incredible. They're super high quality, like big. They're much bigger. Like, the art really shines through. Like, just to see how much bigger it is than just the regular trade.
Yeah.
So it really lets the art shine through. So obviously they're more expensive. It's a little, you're diving in a little bit more, making a bigger purchase. I think when I was at least initially looking, the first year 1 of Mighty Morphin was a little hard to find.
Read that, Phil.
But yeah, I think I love this series. I'm looking forward to continuing reading it. I think
Cool.
someone, I think it was MD in the comments earlier, made a point about the arc that they give Billy in this series, and I think that's the thing that I think is one of the best things that this series does, between this one and Go-Go Power Rangers, is it just gives so much more depth to the characters. They're true to the characters you saw in the show, but they're just so much more than the show could ever be, with the characters. I think Billy is a great example of a character. He was the nerdy techie kid. I was a Red Ranger, Green Ranger. They're the cool, strong, fighting war leader characters. So obviously, I was inclined to lean toward those characters, but I think Billy is a character I love so much more in this series than I ever would have in the TV show, just because they give him such a compelling arc, kind of finding
Yeah.
himself, and basically every Ranger gets a great arc, at least so far from
Cool.
what I've read.
and Phil, I love this is what the comic binge is there for. We're trying to sell people on what might interest them for comic books, and I think you all read comics, my friend. So I'm not trying to say you don't read comics, but I love the fact you're like, man, this is like we're there to educate people to why they should be reading this. If it doesn't appeal to them, that's cool. It's no big deal. But exactly, go read these books. And if you do want to read these books, I've already said those beautiful hardbacks. It is a good read. It's not a bad read. I didn't love like I'm in love with it. I liked it though, and I'm not like thinking it was garbage. I was glad I read it. I would like to read a little bit at some point, but right now life is insane.
Yeah.
But if you're out there, really quick, if you want out there want to read this book, again, Hoopla, people, it's free, digital. Download it. It's through your library. I have Seattle Library because that's where I'm from, and I'm quickly leaving, and I'm gonna cry. But regardless, Hoopla. I can't say it enough. Go spread the word. Free digital comics. Go out there, download it on your library. Michael, you had something to say. I apologize.
Yeah, I was gonna say one last thing is like, we talked a little bit about just the approachability, and I think, to the earlier discussion of the ordering of this series being a little confusing. I will say, if you don't have any familiarity with Power Rangers, and jumping into this is a little intimidating, because it does just throw you in. I think it does a great job of getting you there and kind of explaining it to you. But I definitely think you can also just start with Go-Go Power Rangers, the first volume of that. And then if you're digging that, maybe jump back in, and that'll get you set the ground for you of kind of who the characters are,
Yeah.
and it'll make it maybe a
It'll
little more
onboard you. It will
Yes,
onboard you, Michael.
it'll onboard you. I think just the ordering that you read the two, Go-Go and Mighty Morphin, doesn't matter, I think, until you hit Shattered Nexus, which is the first big crossover event that they do.
I just love the fact that work thing came through on board. Because you know what? I know it's a work thing because my wife says it at her job, and I hear it when she's at work, and she'd be like, because she's an HR person. I know you're not in HR, but still, same difference.
But in a game, you got to onboard your players well.
Right? Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing. You're the HR for gamers, man. You're the HR for gamers. Oh my god, I'm giving you gold here, sir. I'm giving you gold. Anyway, this is again. Go out there, read comics. Quickly, please, if you haven't already, I'll let you guys all spew your stuff out here. But please, if you haven't already, subscribe to the Comic Binge. It makes spider sense, y'all. God, I will never stop using this, by the way. This is amazing. But please go out there,
great.
subscribe.
That's amazing.
I stole it from a comic book, obviously. I took a picture and put it on here. That's how bad it is. But I don't give a crap. I'm punk as you know what. Listen, I would love to get to 1,000 subscribers. To get out there. I would love to get some kind of flow in here financial wise, so I can start putting out my own comic books and other people's comics, not for my own selfish monetary gain, but to put out art with a capital A. So get me to 1,000 so I can pay artists, pay inkers, pay writers to put out comics. That's what I want to do. The Binge is here to create art for the medium. So let's do it. So help me get to 1,000 subscribers. Get me there. That'd be awesome, y'all. Really appreciate it. And so Chris Clow, my partner in crime, thank you for joining me. Where can people find you at, sir?
On Twitter at Chris Clow, CHRISCLOW. Check out the newest episode of Discovery Debrief, a Star Trek podcast where we break down the series finale of Star Trek Picard and say goodbye to the crew of Star Trek The Next Generation. We had a lot of fun breaking it down. Not universally loved, but a fun discussion.
Man, that's weird because I could have sworn people were loving that X-Men reboot you guys were watching.
Doesn't even compare, man. Doesn't even compare. Don't even bring that into it.
All those black uniforms and Patrick Stewart. I'm like, man,
Star
this is
Trek
X-Men.
has had those kinds of uniforms since 1993.
Yes, They all wore black leather and had like yellow and tints in them. You're right, exactly. They
They
all
had
that's
black uniforms. They just changed the materials. Star Trek was ahead of its time before your dinky little X-Men movies
hey,
came along.
listen,
That's
I'm
just
just
the way
I'm
that
just
it is.
saying, I'm just saying when you have like all these people wearing black uniforms and like Patrick Stewart in the middle in a chair, it's like it's an X-Men reboot, homie. That's all I gotta say. So
Star Trek the reappearance of the Star Trek The Next Generation crew in this season puts to shame virtually like 90% of the X-Men movies, unfortunately. But
I mean, I mean,
they should be better movies.
I'll give you the last two. I'll
You're
give
gonna
you
have
the
to give me
last
more
two.
than that. You're gonna have to give me
Dude,
a
Days of the Future
few more
Past
than
is
that.
so good. Don't even start with me.
That is one movie out of what, 9 that they've put out?
And First Class was good.
There are more Star Trek movies that are good
can
than
keep
there
going.
are X-Men movies. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, because you put out 50 Star Trek movies that no one cares about.
How many Star Trek movies have there been, Paul?
At least 50.
At least 50.
That's what it
Okay.
feels
I
like.
don't know anything about Star Trek, but I'm gonna guess that's a high guess. It's probably not 50.
It's on the high
Okay,
end.
45.
Yeah,
I'm a little high. I apologize.
yeah, right. Well,
All right. Anyway, listen,
ridiculous.
I'm glad you're enjoying your X-Men reboot. I love it. I'm really happy for
the
you. I'm
X-Men
glad.
could take some lessons in rebooting in this way. I'll
You know,
just put it that way.
in all seriousness, I've actually compared the mythology of X-Men to Star Trek. That it's too complicated and it's too insane. So
there, as a comic book retailer that aimed to sell X-Men and as a lifelong Star Trek fan, you are way off base. Star Trek is super accessible in comparison to X-Men.
Agree to disagree. Anyway,
we do not agree to disagree, but
we agree to disagree.
Feel free to move on.
Anyway, we agree to disagree. All right.
He agrees to disagree with you, not you agree and him
fair,
both agreeing to disagree.
He agreed to disagree with me. I didn't agree to disagree with him.
Michael, I need to have you on more. That was perfect. Thank you. You exactly.
You gotta start using that GIF Lillian made for you. Way more.
I know. I have it somewhere. I gotta find it.
Custom. It's your catchphase, and it's a custom GIF.
It is. You guys are too good to me. You guys are too good to me. Tim, where can people find you at, sir? And on our podcast, me and you, we share a podcast.
Yes. Yes, you can find me and Paul on Star Wars Saga Continued, Star Wars TSC, which unfortunately, Paul, we've missed the last few Mandalorian episodes. I mean, get your takes on it in a future episode because your thoughts. I'll say that.
Yeah. No. Listen. I've been playing hooky really quick. I've been playing hooky with Star Wars Newsnet and or moonlighting with them and doing and so. Our schedules are all crazy right now with me in the house, so it's gonna get crazier. But there will be a giant like marathon episode of the Saga Continues at some point with me on there, with us talking about the Mandalorian, because there's a lot to discuss. I think internally and externally. But anyway, I digress. So, Tim, the floor is yours again.
Yes. And then you can be on Twitter at Tingy311. And then if you want to hear more Power Rangers talk from me on this coming episode released this Thursday for Batman Podcast, Batfans Podcast, I give a review of the Power Rangers Once and Always reunion show. So you can hear my spoiler thoughts on that on Thursday. It'll be dropping.
Radical. Mr. Michael, you're not a present guy because you work in the gaming industry. You're not trying to get out there too much. I get it. But where can people find your NBA basketball rants?
Yes, yeah, you can find me at MJ Daily on Twitter. Fair warning, we are in basketball playoff season, so that means my feed will be filled with Warriors tweets during games. So, fair warning. But yeah, that's where you can find me. I also tweet about comics and games and other stuff as well sometimes, but right now it's a lot of basketball.
Well, and to be fair, you do every once in a while talk about comic books, which I wish you would do more of. So I'm just gonna keep pushing you to do that.
I'm way behind on my. I was on vacation. I gotta go back to my local store on this week, and I'm gonna probably have a stack of comics about this big because I was out of the country for 2 weeks. So
I've been there. Yeah, it's
vacations are fun.
Yes.
Oh no, man! Don't even.
And I have a lot to catch up on.
Yes, I know.
Nice.
Chris went and got his lightsaber. All y'all made your lightsaber except for me. I haven't done
This
that.
actually isn't the one that I made. That one's still on its way. I had to mail it from Batu, but
Damn,
it'll be here
homie.
later this week.
Damn.
So.
All right. Well, anyway. Well, Michael, Tim, I am super stoked you guys were here. I think I'm going to try to get you guys on for a giant episode for Supermassive. That sounds like a lot of fun because I want to make you guys read it. So start reading it, both of you. All right, buttholes, go on there, get on there, get on it. Like I'm just,
It's a good way to get people to do what
really
you want.
convincing. You know,
sometimes if you insult people enough, they'll do what you want. So I'll just say that. Anyway, no, but you guys know it's a term of endearment. Especially when I call you a butthole, right, Chris? I call you butthole all the time, and I love you. Like
That's true.
So,
You do.
exactly.
And I
So
did get you a puffer pig. So
I know. I really appreciate it, by the way. So anyway, guys, go read Radiant Black. Go read the Supermassive Universe. It's super fun. Especially you two. Go so I can grab you guys in next summer. We can talk about it. Chris, why don't you take us out, my friend?
read more comics.